Short form video is killing photographers, but it's probably not for the reason you think. Because the fact is that brands are more willing than ever now to shell out big budgets for photography projects. I mean, recently one of my clients closed a $19,000 project that was primarily for product photos. So in this video, I'm going to reveal the true reason that short form is crushing photographers, why it shouldn't really matter for you, and most importantly, if you stay to the end, I'll give you 3 specific ways you can take advantage of this shift that's happening right now so you can make a great living selling your photography. But in order to do so, we first have to take a little trip back in time. But we actually went forward because we're in Barcelona, Spain. Okay, so traveling to Barcelona has nothing to do with time travel, but we do need to rewind back to 2016 because a very, very important shift happened that literally transformed the industry forever. Okay, so prior to 2016, social media was just starting to gain some notoriety. People were using like Facebook, Twitter, MySpace was kind of on the downhill at this point. But most of the photos that people were sharing at this point were crunchy selfies, pictures with their friends and family, maybe their dog with like a terrible filter on it. But in 2016, there was this seismic shift. People started to realize that you could actually use Instagram to get business. And on top of that, the rise of the photography influencer came with it. So this was people like Jay Alvarez, Sam Colder, Taylor Cut Films, all these people who were sharing photos of places that previously we had only ever seen through places like National Geographic or maybe some documentaries. So this medium of photography was brand new and people were mesmerized by it. And I personally was mesmerized by it. And that's why in 2017, I moved to Hawaii to go work on a show called Hawaii 5.0. But on the side, I was starting to build up a business trying to be a travel photographer. And a lot of the influence I got were from these original photography influencers. So over the course of the next, I'd say 1.5 to 2, I started to build an audience on Instagram, specifically sharing my travel photography. I remember one of my first posts that ever went viral. So it was featured on Travel and Leisure, Beautiful Destinations, like all these giant feature pages that had kind of blown up over the course of the past few years. And that was like huge for me. That kind of like made me feel like I got on the map. And during this time, there was also a lot of other photographers who were jumping on the platform as well. People who were maybe just hobbyists before, but realized that Instagram was a place that they could start to share their work. And there was tons of talented people. And on top of that, a lot of lower cost cameras started to come out, like the Sony a7 III, which was a full frame camera for like $2,000. So it became much more accessible to a lot more people to shoot high quality photos. And as a result, because there was more people entering the industry, because Instagram was starting to become more of a business centric platform, guess what? Brands started to realize that and they started to hire photographers on retainers to post to their social media, which before this was never even an option. So at this point, there was never a better time in history to be a photographer because gear was cheap, tons of people needed your services, and there was a brand new just medium on the horizon. But there was a problem, because in 2019, a newcomer came on the scene, and it was TikTok. So as you know, TikTok is a video-centric platform, but this wasn't anything new because YouTube had been around for probably like 15 years at this point. Instagram had even tried out like IGTV and even Instagram video, but both of them were kind of a flop. But for some reason, TikTok just blew up and took the market share for video. And what made it so magnetic was that it was authentic video. It was no longer the polished, professional-looking stuff that Instagram had become known for. It was now just people taking selfie videos, or what we now know as UGC content, and that was going viral because that's what people wanted. It was raw, it was unfiltered, it was basically the anti-Instagram, and what happened was this.
TikTok is the latest app to capture the attention of teens and young adults across the world. The app came as the #1 downloaded app of 2018.
In a true Instagram fashion, they thought, well, if we can't beat them, let's join them. So they came out with their own version of TikTok, which was Reels. And in order to compete with TikTok, because they didn't want all their users to go over to that platform, they started incentivizing people to post these Reels by doing Reels bonuses. So the more views you got, the more you got paid. And soon, the reach and engagement for photography content on Instagram literally jumped off a cliff because Reels were the new king in town. Now, this had a few repercussions for photographers on the platform because many of them had spent the last 2, 3, sometimes even 4 years building an audience on this platform off of their photography content. And now all of a sudden, it wasn't getting seen by their followers, it wasn't getting engagement, and ultimately it wasn't getting any kind of reach. Now, for the average person, that might not sound like a big deal, but when your business is based on it, what happens is you get less reach, which means you get less brand deals, which means you get less money. And even these photo retainers that I talked about that they did have actually start to go downhill and be transitioned into video retainers because brands realized that video was performing a lot better than photography was, especially for ads. And all of this combined led to this dilemma where photographers feel like they just have to learn this new skill that they're already behind the curve on, behind the competition on, but they have to learn video just so they can compete and get the engagement and the reach on the platform so they can reach the clients, they can get the brand deals and all that kind of stuff. Which leads us to today, and honestly, this is probably the reason you clicked on this video, because that's not the whole story. Because in fact, photographers are still very much a need, but their role has just kind of shifted from what it was for the past, say, 6 or 7 years. So here's 3 specific ways that you can take advantage of these shifts. Now, first, in order to understand the shift that's happening right now, we first have to understand why companies would even hire a photographer to begin with. So if I were to ask most people that question a few years ago, they would say photography would be used for ads, social content, website, product photography, direct sale ads, maybe billboards, that kind of stuff, maybe some print collateral. Now, a common theme that you'll find in all of these is that the photography is used primarily to sell the product, whether it's indirectly or directly. Now, if we fast forward to today, how many of those use cases that I just mentioned does short form video actually replace? So an argument can definitely be made that short form video performs better for, ads and potentially organic social content, but that still leaves us with a bunch of other use cases. Things like product photography, website content, and yes, I'd still include things like billboards and direct ads on that list as well. Now, sometimes you might be enticed to go to a store or a website based off a video you saw, but the content that converts you once you're there is almost always a photo, which means that the conversion piece on the website is photography. Because think about it, you can have the best social media presence in the world, but if someone goes to the website and the product photo sucks, they're not gonna have trust and they're not gonna buy. So what high quality photography does is actually builds trust in potential buyers, and it's 100% worth investing for brands always. Now I know what you're thinking, that sounds nice and all, but product photography is just a one and done kind of thing. But you would be wrong, because the second way that you can take advantage of this shift is by partnering with brands long term. Now there's tons of different industries that have a recurring need for photography. I'll just give you a few examples. Real estate, architecture, contractors, seasonal brands. Sometimes brands have drops, every season. Sometimes it's every week. Sometimes it's every month. So find those. Hotels, they have renovations. Sometimes they have events. Sometimes they have new things they need to promote. These are just a few examples that you can think of, but basically any industry that has a recurring need for photography is somebody that you would potentially want to create long-term partnerships with. So that's great. So now that we know that brands need to create trust at the point of conversion, and we know that it's better to create long-term partnerships with brands that have a recurring need for photography, the only problem is there's tons of competition. Literally everyone and their mother claims to be a photographer, have a camera, or if they don't, at least they have an iPhone that can take really decent pictures, and all these people in the industry are just constantly trying to undercut each other to the point where they're charging basically nothing. So the question becomes, why would a brand want to work with you? Which brings me to the third shift that you need to take advantage of, which is to completely change what you're selling. Okay, I know we just talked about how companies need photography, so why would I encourage you to change what you're selling? So let me put it to you this way. Let's say I'm selling photos, you're selling photos, 1,000 other people are also trying to pitch photography to this brand. What do they have to gauge their decision off? So first, they're gonna look at portfolio, they're gonna look at experience, they're gonna look at brands that you've worked with, and they're gonna rule out a bunch just off of that. Second thing they're gonna look at is price. So they'll reach out to a few photographers, get a quote, get some rates, and typically they're gonna go with the most economical one that also has a portfolio that matches the style they're going for. Now that's what most photographers think. It's just those 2 factors that clients base off of. But there's actually one more factor that most people don't think about that I call the X factor, and it's this. It's client experience. So think about it. If your skill and portfolio is even and you don't want to be undercutting everybody, the only way to actually stand out is on the experience that the client gets in working with you. Now, this could mean the experience on set, it could mean the experience working with you, but more often than not, this actually means the value that they get in working with you. So when you go to a designer store, there's a reason they give you a glass of wine as you're shopping. It's because you loosen up, you get more comfortable, you have a better experience, which means you're more likely to spend more money with them. So in the same way, you got to think of how you can create that high-class customer experience for your clients so that they want to work with you so much that it doesn't matter if other people are less, doesn't matter if other people have a better portfolio, because they enjoy the experience working with you so much more. So in reality, you're not selling photography because photography is a commodity. Tons of people sell photography. What you're doing is you're selling a client experience. And that's exactly what my client Cynthia did to land that $19,000 $100,000 project I talked about earlier. She literally created a high-level customer experience where she solved every potential problem that the client would have, and as a result, they were willing to pay her a lot of money for it. So instead of just showing up, clicking the button, leaving, and editing, which most photographers do, and most photographers just charge a flat day rate for, what she did was a little bit different. She actually offered strategy sessions, implementation sessions, obviously the shoot, custom lookbooks and mood board, custom styling, like all this kind of different stuff that just makes a much more elevated experience. Plus the proposal she sent and kind of the communication that she had with the client was just much higher end. And as a result, they were willing to pay a lot more because it was an elevated experience. So in essence, she became the Gucci and not the Target. So now that you know the 3 shifts that you need to make in order to get treated like a pro and paid like a pro, you first need to know how to pitch yourself like a pro. So check out this video here where I show you exactly how to structure your pitches so that you can get more clients.